Hey besties, happy Sunday. Hi everyone. Happy Sunday. Oh my god. It's so cold in Texas. Texas is doing that thing where it has extreme weather on both ends. It's like real cold one day and then it's real warm the next day and it just flip-flops every 12 hours. So, woke up to it being real cold outside, but I ran my little errands, did my little things and now we're here. How was y'all's week? I tried to actually sit and think about things to talk about today because I feel like last week was a little bit of a mess. But if it just so happened to land for you or you experienced something that we talked about last week during your week, I would love to hear about it and just see how you experienced it. Um Today I kind of want to talk more astrotherapy and try to make more sense of what the sky looks like. So I have some notes and I will be pulling cards for the new moon in Sag, which is this Saturday. Um so yeah, that's kind of my agenda. But yeah, while y'all are talking in the chat, let me just tell you about the transits for the week and some of the other ones that are coming up. Starting tomorrow, the sun enters Sagittarius. And then on the 17th, we have Sun square Saturn. The 20th, we'll have the new moon and Venus in Sagittarius. So Venus will finally leave Scorpio. And then later this month, Mercury will enter Sagittarius. I didn't write down the date, but I think it's like the 28th or something like that. But something that is coming up, and these always end up being spicy transits, is Venus will conjoin Mars at 23 degrees of Sagittarius on January 8th. So we have a loading, I should say, Mars Venus conjunction. Those tend to shake up a lot of things relationally. So I want to include that in this larger conversation, even though it's not happening for a while, but also because Venus will enter Sagittarius at the same time as the new moon. So it feels related to the conversation. Let me see who's here. Morning, Deb. Hi, Desiree. Hey, Carrington. Hope you're staying warm over there as well. Hey, Sloan. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Where do I want to start? I'm going to talk out loud. I'm going to think through some things, and then hopefully by the time we pull cards, it all comes together as it does. So the way the sky looks right now and will look over the rest of the month, Jupiter in Gemini is the main bitch in charge. It'll be responsible for all of these Sag placements and for Saturn in Pisces. So I believe by the end of the month, we'll have the Sun, Mercury, Venus, well, and not the moon anymore, but we'll have the Sun, Mercury, and Venus all in Sagittarius. Ruled by Jupiter and Gemini. And then Jupiter and Gemini until the end of the month will be ruled by Mercury and Scorpio. And then later it'll be ruled by Mercury and Sagittarius. I didn't even think about that opposition. Something else to consider that I'll talk about later. that's more of a January problem than it is, I think, a December problem. So we'll cross that bridge later. But Jupiter in Gemini being the main planet, the loudest planet in the sky right now, and being in a weird position, being in a sign opposite its own sign, is just kind of weird. And we've been talking about this transit all year, right? Just retrograded back into Gemini. And I think what retrograde planets do, aside from flip everything around or flip everything around outside of us, is it makes us do a lot of work internally. Like we do a lot of internal growth and change and shifting, especially as we're trying to acclimate to our new context. So I think the difference between Jupiter and Gemini now versus Jupiter and Gemini earlier this year is that we've experienced Jupiter in Cancer. Like, that's related. We've been having Gemini Cancer retrogrades since last fall. last summer, as a matter of fact. And so I think it's important context to consider that we had Jupiter in Cancer for a month, just posted up, retrograde, and that forced us to have to, one, feel our feelings, feel our bodies, engage with our bodies and in our emotions in a different way. And then it gave, at least I feel like it gave me a lot of insight into um regulation and dysregulation, which we were talking about on stream a lot, but also just control, like what it is that we're really trying to control, whether that's ourselves or our surroundings, whenever we feel dysregulated. So now that Jupiter is moved back into Gemini, something I'm seeing come up a lot is this conversation around the ways that we are trying to control how we feel um, with certainty, like using certainty. Was that how I want to say that? Using certainty as a mechanism of control, or as a form of trying to feel in control of ourselves or in control of our situation. Because Gemini as a mutable sign, Pisces and Sagittarius as mutable signs, all of them are trying to either achieve certainty or feel like they have some semblance of certainty that they can work with, because uncertainty is really dysregulating. Uncertainty is something that feels very out of control. Uncertainty is the unknown, and it's outside of our realm of understanding because we don't know. There's a level of ignorance around that. And when we don't know, we feel like we can't act, we feel like we can't move, we feel like we can't think, can't make decisions. And more importantly, I think the most dysregulating thing about uncertainty is that we don't know if we can trust ourselves to handle the outcome of whatever the uncertainty is. Like, we can't plan necessarily. You can, but there's so much that's out of your control when you're dealing with uncertainty, that ultimately I think the struggle there is that we don't trust ourselves to navigate whatever the potential outcome might be if we don't know what the outcome is going to be. So that being said, something that's required of us in this moment is a deeply rooted belief in something. That can be a belief in yourself, but that just feels too vague in general. I think it's just, you need to believe in something. You need to have faith in something, which I think this has come up a few times this year. A belief in something, faith in something, like something that grounds you in a felt sense of certainty. Because without some kind of felt sense of certainty, I think it's very easy to just spiral and overthink everything. So I think Jupiter and Gemini, left to its own devices, would just be a lot of us being skeptical and doubtful of our own ability to know something. Which is ironic because Gemini and Mercury as a planet is all about learning and seeking new information and being curious and figuring some shit out through accumulating information and knowledge. But I think another aspect of this Gemini stuff that maybe I haven't talked about enough, that I feel like always comes up during Sagittarius transits, is as we learned from Wounds and Gifts by the People's Oracle, this theme of gullibility, being gullible as a coping strategy, or I can't remember if it's gullible as a coping strategy or gullible as a wound, but one of Gemini's struggles is being convinced or being made to believe something. So I think we hear gullible and we think about people who fall for it. I always make the joke of, I got my clown mask on, got my clown shoes on, I fell for it again award. But it's because someone made you believe that. There is an effort being made to convince you of something that may or may not be true, but the effort in convincing you is so that you don't believe yourself, so that you don't believe your own thoughts and your own ideas and your own narratives, and you instead outsource your conviction, if you will, or you outsource your trust to someone or something that maybe feels like it's more knowledgeable than you, more has more authority, or just knows better than you do. And that's where the gullibility comes in from. It's like the gullibility of, okay, well, if I can't believe myself, then I will just believe these people who seem like they're really sure what they're talking about, because I'm not really sure what I'm talking about. But I think the other irony of Gemini, and especially when we talk about like oppositions aren't opposite, and we're talking about Gemini and Sagittarius, as much as we said that that Sagittarius is trying to convince you so that they can believe themselves, I think Gemini secretly does believe themselves, but doesn't want other people to know that they believe themselves. Not, that's not really what I mean, but whenever you are trying to, let me think of an example. When I'll use my own Gemini ass as an example. When I've been studying something a lot and researching something a lot, but it's like the information that I'm studying and researching is new to me, and I'm then trying to teach or explain all the information I've learned to someone else, and then they rebut what I'm saying with what they believe to be true about the concept. For example, let's just say I'm learning about nakshatras, right? For Vedic astrology, because that's something that I don't know very much about, but I try to learn and dabble. If I'm then trying to talk to someone else about nakshatras, who maybe this other person has a little bit more experience with nakshatras, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I just learned about Ardra being my moon knock, and Ardra represents this, this, and this. And then the other person is like, no, actually, I think Ardra actually represents this. If I know for a fact that I read in a Vedic astrology textbook somewhere that Ardras are typically, I don't know, people who like to do debates, and someone says Ardra doesn't like to debate, I'll second guess myself, even though I know that I read this somewhere. But for some reason, because this other person who I perceive to be more knowledgeable on the subject says that that's not true, I'll doubt myself, even though somewhere deep down, I don't actually agree with them. But because I believe in my head that they know more than me or they have more experience than me, I'll doubt myself. That's something that I feel like Gemini does and needs to fucking stop doing, first of all. But the other piece of this is that I think Gemini has such a large capacity for knowledge and information that it sometimes takes in information quickly, and not always through repetition. It's just kind of like you absorb information one time and then you're like, okay, cool, that makes sense to me. And because it happens so quickly, and maybe the like time and the effort of repetitive knowledge and learning and memorizing things hasn't been put in just yet, then it's easy for you to doubt. It's easier for you to doubt all the things that you know, or there's just some kind of a loose grasp on knowledge sometimes. I think because you know so much and broadly know so much, versus I think Sagittarius on the flip side probably tends to fixate or hyper focus on one thing. Like there's a zeroing in on a particular set of ideas that they feel deeply convinced that they know what they know. So both sides experience a version of self-doubt, but I think Gemini's self-doubt tends to be internalized. Like, I don't know what I'm talking about. Whereas Sagittarius's self-doubt is, this other person doesn't know what they're talking about, and they're trying to make me not believe myself. It's like that kind of weird dynamic. So then to have Jupiter in Gemini, it's like, yeah, you gain trust in yourself by learning more, consuming more information. You embody a level of self-skepticism whenever you decide that somebody knows better than you do. So you become more skeptical of yourself instead of skeptical of the source. And then another thing that Jupiter does is it holds prejudice. It prejudges things with little with without having enough information. It will prejudge something. And this is honestly, I even take that back. This is like the thing that Jupiter does. If you learn nothing else today, because this is a Jupiter heavy month, remember that Jupiter prejudges something based on very little information. It will create a whole entire narrative, storyline, assessment about someone, something, with as little information as possible. So that prejudgment, prejudice of Jupiter is like one of the strongest things that it does. And yet, when Jupiter is in Gemini and it's been made to believe something else, the prejudice then just comes from the fact that somebody told you to believe something other than what you know to be true. So now you're like, oh, because you've given up, again, authority over your own judgment, basically. You've given up authority over your own judgment, and therefore, you're prejudging yourself. You're prejudging your own knowledge and saying, I must not know enough. And so because this other person who I think knows more than me says that this must be true, then that just must be what it is. You're prejudging a situation based on someone else's judgment, someone else's authority, I think, when Jupiter is in Gemini. So much of Jupiter and Gemini in general in this retrograde is about us. I don't even want to say learning to trust our own judgment, but it's kind of like understanding how you come to judge things, how you come to the conclusions that you come to, how you come to the beliefs that you believe. It's like actually asking yourself the question of why do I believe this? I think Jupiter in Sagittarius doesn't really ask why they believe what they believe. They just believe what they believe very strongly, and will come up with reasons and philosophical frameworks or politics or whatever it is to justify what it is that they believe. But I don't know that they question what they believe as much as Jupiter and Gemini is questioning what they believe, questioning themselves and how they came to those conclusions. So that is a strength of this transit. I think it's great for asking yourself, like, why do you believe that? Where are you getting this knowledge from? Where are you getting this information from? Why do you believe the things that you say that you believe? And yeah, let me see what y'all are saying. I'm very Jupiterian in my chart, and I used to be such a hater in my youth and judging everybody. I'm trying to tone it down as Saturn goes over my sun and Jupiter. Yeah. Yeah. Remembering the difference between intuition and prejudice is, whew, yes, it is. I have a bad feeling about this. Okay, but why? Okay, so this is a great segue into the next layer that I want to build onto this. So if Jupiter and Gemini is having us ask ourselves what we believe and why, how we come to that conclusion, then we have to look at the planet responsible for Jupiter at any given moment, which is Mercury. And Mercury moves through a sign in about 3 to 4 weeks. Unless it's retrograding, then it takes about 3 months to get fully through its retrograde cycle, pre and post shadow and all that. Having Mercury in Scorpio right now, this means that we are relying on emotional authenticity to guide how we express ourselves and to guide how we decide what information to take in and to share. So I'll say that again. Emotional authenticity is the thing that we are using as a form of discernment. So if you tie in the Mercury in Scorpio with Saturn in Pisces, both of these things are using our internal world, our internal emotional landscapes as a form of discernment. Mercury in Scorpio says, when I am not being influenced by how other people feel, when I am not being persuaded by a sense of belonging, or rather, when I'm not being persuaded by the desire to belong, when I don't rely on everyone being in agreement, this is what I feel, this is what I think. That's Mercury and Scorpio to me. It's just when I'm not centering my desire to belong, this is what I believe, this is what I think, this is what I feel, and then saying that. And there's a level of Mercury in Scorpio also taking its own body and feelings and the information that it's receiving about its body and feelings at face value, which has its pros and cons, right? For example, if I am talking to someone who doesn't know me and sharing that I think someone's being racist towards me, part of that is me knowing that I'm visibly Black, um, and that I am speaking to someone who is an older white man, like an old white man. If he's speaking to me in a way that's being condescending, even though I'm, let's say, just doing my job at work, and I know that the rules are, in order to take classes with us, you have to submit a transcript. Otherwise, you're not going to get enrolled, first of all. But you're also not going to get classes for college credit. If I know this because this is my job and this is information that I share every single day, but then someone comes in and tells me, I don't think that you know what you're talking about. Because of what we just talked about with Jupiter and Gemini, and now we're talking about Mercury and Scorpio, there's a reason to believe that because there's a fear response then elicited at someone telling me that I don't know what I'm talking about because I'm Black, I can make the assumption that it's because I'm Black. That may or may not be true, but talking about Mercury and Scorpio then I might start to doubt what I know to be true just because a fear response has come up in my body. Not necessarily because I believe this white man, but because a fear response has come up in my body that anytime, I don't know if I'm explaining this the way that I need to, but I'm going to keep going with it and it'll start to make sense. I guess what I'm really saying is there's a choice I could make here of saying, okay, maybe I don't know. Maybe that's not even what I'm trying to say. I think there's an experience for Mercury and Scorpio where Mercury and Scorpio, when experiencing a threat response based on its identity, will lean into self-doubt as a way to protect itself rather than leaning into self-trust as a way to stand up against this other person. Does that make sense? Because what I'm trying to get at is the way that Mercury and Gemini have a tendency to shrink and self-doubt. And if there's someone else with an identity that I perceive to have some level of authority over me, that's going to add to this feeling of wanting to shrink, not necessarily because I think I'm wrong, but because I'm trying to protect myself. So that's kind of the alienation, self-abandonment thing of fixed signs and of Scorpio in this case that says I feel a threat response in my body because somebody else is doubting me. And so instead of doubling down or saying it with my chest, maybe I go ask somebody else who I perceive to have more authority than me, my boss, who's also a man. I'll go ask him and have him deal with this white man instead of me because I already know that I'm being perceived as someone less knowledgeable and someone less than in general. I don't believe that, but there's some awareness of how I'm being perceived, right? So there's a shrinking that goes on there. On the flip side, if I'm aware that what I'm experiencing is a fear response based on an identity thing, I can approach the situation differently because I know in my mind the fear response I'm experiencing is not about me not knowing what I'm talking about. It's someone trying to project and leverage some power over me because they're being racist. Right? Like if I know that that's what's going on, I can approach the conversation differently. Same thing for women, right? If you're a woman dealing with a man in a position of authority and you're trying to tell him like, "Hey, I think every time that we I don't know, just a woman trying to tell a man in power like, "Hey, I'm starting to notice a pattern here, a trend here of." I'm trying to think of an example on the spot, but I'm imagining like a corporate setting and there being, let's say, even then, let's add a layer to it and say a black woman is trying to tell her white man boss that like, hey, every time this thing happens, this is the result. And white man is like, I don't know if that's really what's going on, but thanks for giving me a heads up. And then he ignores it until a white man comes along and says the exact same thing that the black woman said and warns him, and then he believes him over her. That's another example of what I feel like this Gemini Scorpio Jupiter Mercury combination thing is going on. It's a form of gaslighting rooted in identity, or a form of being dismissive rooted in identity, or a form of, again, being gullible, having to be gullible, made to believe something because of the identity of the person sharing that information. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? Because I'm laying all of this foundation to get to the Sagittarius of it all, which is like particularly the Mars in Sagittarius of it all that says sometimes you're in a position or in a situation where it feels like you have to abandon your beliefs or whatever it is that you believe to be true, because if you don't abandon that belief, you might experience some level of alienation, or you might experience a level of um or you might feel separated, or it might start to separate you from other people. If you feel like you're being patronized, if you feel like you're being experiencing condescension, or if you feel like you're not being believed in general, you might find yourself abandoning something that you previously know to be true, to avoid that alienation, to avoid the abandonment, to avoid um othering yourself. And at the same time, because so much of Sagittarius, so shifting gears from Mercury and Scorpio to Mars and Sagittarius, Venus, the sun, the moon in Sagittarius, so much of Sagittarius is just what you believe in general, what you think is true in general. So I know typically what we when we talk about Sagittarius, we're talking about politics or religion or, an actual framework of beliefs. But Sagittarius, just in and of itself, is what you believe to be true. So that can be something as simple as your internal narratives, like what you think about yourself, what you believe to be true about yourself. It's, again, stepping back into that prejudice. It's what you believe to be true about other people. Um, it's what you believe to be true about a situation. But the point is that you really deeply believe and feel convinced that something is true. That's Sagittarius. So if what you believe to be true is that in the presence of certain people, you're wrong, or if what you believe to be true is this person must know better than me, or if what you believe to be true is I don't know how to handle this situation, if what you believe to be true is that you can or can't do something, the question in all of this is asking yourself why you believe that. Jupiter and Gemini is giving you the ability to ask yourself why you believe that to be true about yourself, about the situation, about this other person, whatever it is. And the reason, at least at this moment, while Mercury is still in Scorpio, the reason you believe that to be true is because your body is trying to give you some kind of insight into the situation that you're dealing with. Based on the type of person you are, the experiences you've had in the world because of who you are, your body is responding to uncertainty in this particular way. Maybe it's responding to this uncertainty with anxiety. Maybe it's responding with an inflated sense of like self and ego. Maybe it's responding with grief. Maybe it's responding with anger. But the way that your body is responding to the situation is telling you why you believe what you believe about yourself or that situation. So I'll give you an example. When I was interviewing for this promotion week before last, I had so much anxiety that I couldn't sleep the night before the interview. And a lot of my fears going into it, of course, I realized this after the fact, but a lot of my fears going into this interview were around my identity and how I was perceiving myself, like in a visual sense, because this was also the week of the Taurus full moon. So I was getting in my head about the fact that, I'm perceived as a man at this point in my transition, but I'm also 5'5", 5'6" on a good day, so I'm small. My voice is deep enough. It's not like super duper deep, but small guy, not super deep voice, kind of effeminate, kind of sassy. And I also just look really young. Like a lot of people at work think that I'm a student. They think I'm in my like early 20s. I'm about to be 31 next month. So I was realizing that there's a lot of, like, when I talk about myself being a Gemini first house moon, Gemini rising, I am a person that people tend to, if not underestimate, they also can be a little bit patronizing towards me or condescending towards me because I look young. I look, I look, and these for people who don't know me, I maybe look like someone who's really young, really inexperienced, and really just kind of like naive. Or at least I think it's easy to project that onto me if you don't know me, if you haven't really heard me talk, or if you've only experienced me whenever I'm being a silly, funny, goofy guy. I feel like that's like peak just Gemini experience. And then you add in these other Scorpio layers of, I look this way because I'm a trans man, or just like I look this way because I'm experiencing puberty as an adult. I'm experiencing like a version of adolescence as an adult from being on testosterone. So there's a lot of those factors that I'm going into this interview with those things on my mind about myself that they don't necessarily know that about me. All they know is what they see. and the prejudices that they can make about me because of how they see me. Now, I don't know if they feel that way. Nobody's told me that. Obviously, they hired me for this job in the first place, but I don't know that they have those thoughts about me. I have those thoughts about me going into this interview. And those thoughts about me are making me more nervous and therefore creating this kind of mentality within myself that I don't know what I'm talking about. And maybe I'm not a good fit for this job, or maybe I don't know enough to do this job, or maybe they don't think I know enough or am qualified enough for this job. So now I have to convince them. I have to make them believe that I can do this job. But if I'm going to make them believe that I can do this job, I have to convince myself that I can do this job. So, um, anyway, that kind of shifts into some other things. But the point is, if I already have some like negative beliefs about myself or some self alienating beliefs about myself, that's going to make me not feel as confident and as trustworthy in myself whenever I have to go and like perform in front of some other people, because I already have all of these thoughts about myself that are not that are very insecure. Now, I could maintain these judgments and these beliefs about myself and assume that everybody else also thinks that way and let that guide how I make decisions and how I move through the world. Or I can do the other thing that Mars is really good at, and that's regain a sense of control and autonomy over my beliefs and my thoughts about myself. And yes, this is going to sound like um affirmations. It's going to sound like manifestation stuff. It's going to sound like um it's going to sound like me choosing to believe something else, like quite literally just deciding that I don't want to believe these things about myself. I don't necessarily have evidence that these things are true, but we're not talking about Virgo right now. Although evidence helps, but I think there's something about Sagittarius, and especially about the sun in Sagittarius and like Mars in Sagittarius, where you can decide that you don't want to believe something or that something isn't true. Um, so if I go into that, if I then tell myself like, okay, I don't know, like tapping into the self-doubt or tapping into doubt or skepticism about a situation, I can do a reframe and I can say, well, I don't know that these other people on this interview panel are thinking these things about me. I don't know what they think about me. I can suspend my judgment for what other people are thinking about me. And I can replace that with saying, and well, first in the realm of emotional authenticity, I can say, I'm anxious, right? We've been having conversations about emotional regulation and all this other stuff over the last month. So the first thing I can do is just name how I'm feeling. I feel so much anxiety. And then instead of projecting my anxieties and insecurities onto the interview panel, I can ask myself, okay, why am I anxious? What is it about this that makes me feel anxiety? What is the thing I'm actually afraid of? I am afraid that I don't know enough. I am afraid that I am not capable. I am afraid that um, I'm gonna misrepresent myself. Those are all valid things to be afraid of and be anxious of. And then I can say, okay, well, what do I fear will happen I am if I don't know enough? If I go into this interview and I don't know enough, what am I afraid is going to happen? I'm afraid that I'm going to be rejected for the job. Okay, cool. So we've gotten to another heart of the fear. I'm afraid that I will be rejected for this position. Then what? What happens if I'm rejected for this position? What am I going to have to feel? I'm going to have to feel sad. I'm going to have to feel grief. But then to the point of this question, if I experience that rejection, there's also an underlying fear that then I'll have to believe something else about myself. that I maybe don't believe right now. If I experience this rejection, there may be something that I believe that's going to open up me um believing that that all of my worst fears come true, that I actually am incompetent, that I actually don't know enough, that I actually am not prepared for this job, whatever, whatever, whatever. So what if that's true? Let's say it is true that I don't know enough yet. Then what? Then that means I have more to learn. Okay, cool. If I have more to learn, then I'm just going to go fucking learn it, right? Like you can get to a place where if you're experiencing so much of this self-doubt and this fear, like you get to the root of your fear and you ask yourself, what does this mean? What can I do about this? What's the outcome if I get to this place? And you start to realize like a lot of the fear of the unknown is just, I mean, it just quite literally is the fear of the unknown, but it's not that you can't do anything about it. It's again, it circles back to that whole thing I said about cardinal signs, even though we're not talking about cardinal signs, where there's a fear of having to feel something that you don't want to feel. It feels really bad to be rejected, especially if you got rejection sensitive dysphoria. It feels really bad, but it's also just a big ego hit, because ego hits ultimately they make you have to think something else about yourself. And disruptions to our self concept and disruptions to who we think we are feel threatening. Like on a visceral level, it feels threatening. That's why I talk about fixed signs, Leo, Scorpio, Taurus, Aquarius, as being about self preservation, because you're trying to not just preserve your physical body, but you're also trying to preserve the image that you have of yourself in your mind at all cost, because you develop an understanding of not just yourself but also an understanding of how you interact with the world based on this schema, this framework, that this concept that you have of yourself. And whenever you don't know who you are, then the world becomes scarier to you. I think this is like when I talk about Jupiter and the ability to prejudge something, and we talk about the sun as ego and like trying to preserve your sense of self. Those two things are what make you feel safe in the world. They answer the question of, am I safe? Is this safe? And they answer the question of, can I do it? I think that's something that Mars also itself is really trying to do, is it's trying to ask the question, am I safe / is this safe, and can I do it? Sometimes we don't know the answer to that. But I think the opportunity we have with Mars and Sagittarius is that you can decide, again, you can decide. I don't even know if decide is the word, but like there is a decisiveness, and there is like a way that fire, Sagittarius as a fire sign, is able to use that strength of will and autonomy to decide to do something. But I think it's hard to make that decision when you have all of these other self-limiting beliefs, basically, that tell you, that you're not worthy, that you're not capable, that you're not deserving, that you're not all of these other things that would allow you to kind of do that mental reset, mental reframe. And I do think part of it too is also the nervous system of it all, which I thought I was going to talk more about that today, but maybe I'll talk about it another time, or maybe it comes up with the cards in a second. But to bring it back to me doing this interview, I can go into the interview with the anxiety of, I don't know if I'm going to do a good job. I don't know if I'm going to convince these people. I don't know if I'm convinced myself that I'm ready for this. Or I can sit with myself and I can say, I know I'm nervous because I want to do a good job. I know I'm anxious because I'm worried that I don't know enough. However, there is so much that I do know. There is so much that I am bringing, that I've already done. So many experiences, all of the knowledge that I've learned. Like there's so much that I am bringing into this situation that maybe I don't know how it's going to apply fully, like in reality. Or maybe I do know. Maybe I did prepare in advance, to answer these questions, these interview questions, if they were to come up with substantial evidence of ways that I've already kind of navigated these certain situations. So I can go into it saying that, yes, I am nervous. I can validate those feelings, but I can also add in my own beliefs of myself that say, I do know how to handle situations when whenever they get, or rather, I do know how to handle myself. I do know how to navigate uncertainty. I do know how to navigate this XYZ situation. I do know how to do so many different things. And anything that I don't know how to do, I know and I trust that I have the capacity to learn. Like maybe I don't have it all figured out and I want to appear that I have it all figured out, but nobody has it all figured out. There is a difference between, though, approaching something, and maybe this is a Gemini and Sagittarius thing of it all too. Like I know both sides and all the mutables in their own way have this pressure on themselves to know, because uncertainty is scary. But just in general, I think there's a pressure to know and to not be found out that you don't know. But nobody just knows everything. Everything we know, we had to learn, whether that's consciously or subconsciously. So the question is not so much like needing to already know something. It's really, do I know how to find out what it is that I need to know? Which kind of circles back to the whole Jupiter and Gemini thing. Do I know how to find the answers to the questions that I have? Do I know how to learn the skills to the things that I need to learn? And if I just really can't do it, the next question is not that I shouldn't be doing this job. It's that I need to find somebody who can. I'm totally allowed to, in that case, outsource to somebody else who knows better and ask the questions that I need to ask. But I don't know. I guess there's a way of reframing your beliefs about yourself to this kind of judgment, shaming, blaming way of yourself of like, I should know better. I should do better. I should, all these things, and shifting it into, I can figure this out. I can find out what I need to find out. I can learn what I need to learn. I can ask who I need to ask. And that will give me the certainty that I'm seeking in this moment. If I have more to learn, then I'll just have to learn it. Yeah. If I have more to learn, then I just have more to learn. But I don't know. I wrote down, I wrote down as like a coping strategy for this moment. Hey, Jim, I wrote this down earlier. It didn't make sense to me, but now it kind of makes sense to me. I said, something that Mars and Sagittarius does with the combination of Jupiter in Gemini and Mercury in Scorpio. So specific to this moment in time, I put the coping strategy of separating yourself or severing from relationships as a way to self-isolate when you've been persuaded to believe something. And what I think I'm hearing in this moment is whenever you, sorry, one second. What I'm thinking about that is like, one thing that Scorpio does is it preemptively rejects itself. Like it does a self-rejection thing because, and I think all fixed signs do their own version of this, but the Scorpio self-isolation is me deciding that, like using myself as an example, me deciding that because I'm trans, like certain people won't want to date me. Self-rejection of like, because I've internalized all of the shame and whatever else from the media and from the right and whatever else, that like I'm an abomination and therefore nobody's going to want to date me. So I'm just not even going to try to date in the first place. Self-rejection. You get ahead of the rejection that you would experience by being vulnerable and putting yourself out there, right? Because if I reject myself, one, that makes me feel in control of the rejection. And two, it prevents me from having to feel that from someone else. Like I can beat myself up. It doesn't hurt as bad as somebody else beating me up for whatever reason. right? So that's one thing that Scorpio does. It says, I'm just going to remove myself so that somebody else doesn't have to reject me, which is, again, looking in the mirror from Taurus, who has experienced rejection enough to know that if I were to reveal these certain parts of me to someone else, they would reject me. So instead, I'm going to conceal it. So both of them do self-abandonment in their own way. But the way that Scorpio in particular, and that as it pertains to this conversation, is Scorpio says, I'm not even going to give myself the chance. I'm not even going to give myself the chance for a possible connection by putting myself out there. I'm simply going to remove myself. I'm going to take myself out of it. I'm not going to let you see me at all. There is, because I can't conceal. If I were to try to conceal my boobs, like I can do that to a point until you take my shirt off, then they're going to be there. And if I get top surgery, the scars are going to be there. Like the difference cannot be concealed with Scorpio, whatever it is. So instead of trying to conceal it in the way that Taurus can naturally do, Scorpio will simply remove themselves. Cool. Feel like that makes sense. Shit, what was I saying? I lost my train of thought of why I brought that up. Preemptive rejection. Oh, so whenever it comes to this whole separating yourself or severing relationships as a way to self-isolate when you've been led to believe something else, if you've internalized narratives about yourself and nothing in you is working to combat those beliefs, those self-limiting beliefs, or even if it's your politics, if it's your religion, if whatever it is, if you've internalized this belief, is that right? If you've internalized the belief, so you have the choice then. If the belief is the thing holding you back, I think it's easier to cut the belief off than it is to cut yourself off. I think that's what I'm trying to get at, but I'm struggling to say the words. But it's like, if the only thing in between you and the thing that you want, the thing that you need, the thing that you desire, whatever it is a belief, cut the belief off. Hello? Change your mind. And look, I'm saying that I'm being funny as I'm saying that as if it's an easy thing to do. I know it's not an easy thing to do, but it is a necessary thing to do to survive. If believing that being queer is going to make you go to hell and burn for eternity, and you believe that, like, if let me say this another way. If you experience so much shame and self-loathing because of a belief that because you're queer, you're going to go to hell, I think you should cut the belief off. You could cut off your queerness and say, you know what, they're right. I'm going to go to conversion therapy, have it all shocked out of me, and then I'll go to heaven. Okay, you could do that. But we come back to the uncertainty of it all, that nobody really knows what happens after you die. You can confront that uncertainty either by saying, okay, yes, I am going to decide to believe that I'll burn for eternity for being who I am. Or I'm going to decide, actually, I don't want to believe that. It's not conducive to me living a well-lived life to believe that being who I am is going to make me burn for eternity in hell. Maybe instead of not believing myself, I should believe myself that this is who I am, and I should not believe that I'm going to go to hell for being who I am. Now, obviously, it's not just as easy as changing your mind, but that's part of it. If you can get to that part, you're already doing a lot. The next step into internalizing that belief is all the somatic work that we've been talking about over the last month. Because it's scary. Like, if y'all were raised in the church, the indoctrination aspect of Sagittarius that we haven't talked about, the indoctrination of it all is that they have absolutely colonized your nervous system for you to believe in heaven or hell so that they can control your behavior. So they have to get into you psychologically and somatically so that whenever you have a gay thought, your heart races and you feel anxious. They did, somebody went in and did that to you so that you would believe that you're an abomination and stop being gay. That's how it works. Whenever people on the left try to like say that, oh, we can't erase like queer people from the media because then it's going to make little kids feel like it's bad to be who they are, and I never would have known who I was if I never saw queer media and never saw an example of da 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 da. And they say this as if the right doesn't already know that. They know. That's why they're doing it. They're like, yeah, hell yeah. I don't want my kids to think that they're gay, so I don't want to expose them to that shit. Y'all keep telling me that being exposed to this shit made you realize that you were gay. Well, I don't want my kids to realize that they're gay, so I'm not going to show them any of that stuff. And on top of that, I'm going to tell them that they're going to burn for eternity from some red man under the earth if they be gay. And they do it to you whenever you're really, really young and have no concept of the world and of life so that you believe it. And then you can escalate that obviously to the point where you're committing entire genocides against people because of a belief. So whenever I talk about like, yeah, sometimes you have to catch, or like on a more mundane level, you have to catch the thoughts that you're having about yourself and the things that you believe about yourself and ask yourself if that's really true. Is this really true? And do I really sincerely believe that I'm gonna go to hell for being gay, for loving another person of the same gender? Do I really believe I'm gonna go to hell for feeling deeply in my spirit that I'm a man? Why would that be true? Why does that make sense? How does that make sense? Ask those questions. So going back to this interview example, I need to use a different example because this one's boring me, but I can go into that interview and believe that I don't know jack shit about my job that I've been working for the last year, or I can be like, this role builds on all of the knowledge that I already have. There's going to be a lot of things I have to learn because with any new job, like I got to learn some stuff. But there's already so many things that I already know that I'm bringing with me. There's already so many experiences that I've had that I'm bringing with me into this job. And the rest of it is something that I get to be curious about and that I get to have a sense of wonder about and a sense of feeling inspired to solve new problems and be challenged in a new way. That does put my skills to the test, yes, and that is scary. And sometimes I'm going to get it wrong. But when I get it wrong, not if, when I get it wrong, what supports do I have to fall back on? And if I don't believe that I have supports to fall back on, that's something I need to address up front. I need to ask somebody like, hey, so if I fuck this up, like what are the consequences? What are the steps that I need to take if I fuck this up? Like get the answers to those questions in advance instead of telling yourself that you have to have it all figured out. You don't. I know somebody in the audience thinks I'm speaking directly to her, and I kind of am, but I'm also, it's also very fitting for the moment. Like I have, I don't know if y'all can see in the background, my sticky notes. I have a bunch of sticky notes that have the wounds and the gifts of all of the planets, the signs, and the modalities. Because people on Twitter told me it's a good way to organize your thoughts when you can see them. So I put some out, and that's how I kind of arrived at these questions of like, not these questions, but these statements and just looking at how these planets are functioning. And I think the thing that I kept stumbling over before I did all of those sticky notes was why I kept still seeing people talking about emotional regulation and talking about dealing with your body and stuff, even though Jupiter has moved out of Cancer, because I expected it to go back to the typical Jupiter and Gemini conversation. But I think the point is Mercury is still in Scorpio ruling Jupiter and Gemini. And a lot of the self-doubt that we experience comes from that feeling of insecurity and that feeling of a lack of safety and the feeling of uncertainty and the feeling of fear and the feelings of anxiety. And when we don't know how to deal with those feelings, we instead reach for certainty somewhere outside of us because we think if I can feel a sense of certainty outside of me, I'll feel a sense of certainty on the inside. When that's not true. Sometimes, well, I mean, it's true, but it's also true that sometimes you're not going to get that certainty. And I think this is something that we've been talking about for for Saturn and Pisces, and for people having their Saturn and Pisces Saturn return. But for all of us just experiencing Saturn and Pisces, it's like sometimes you're not going to get the certainty that you crave or that you need. Sometimes you're going to have to go into something and not fucking know how it's going to turn out. Sometimes you're going to have to just not know until you know, or not know until you learn, or not know until the evidence is revealed, or not know until, or just not know and have to have faith that you will know eventually. To not even that, but it's like maybe a lot of the Sagittarius is giving you the opportunity to create a new belief and a new mental framework around uncertainty. And when you experience uncertainty, what do you do? What can you do? Because that Mars is a planet of action. You know, we'll deal with Venus. Well, I guess we'll deal with Venus, but she's in this week too. Sometimes that does require what am I trying to say? I think the Sagittarius of it all is like it has a little bit, I think all fire signs that have a little bit of this like fake it till you make it type of thing with it. And so Mars and Sagittarius is kind of like, well, if I really believe these things, then I need to behave in a way that is in accordance with my beliefs. And you can do that consciously or you can do it unconsciously. Unconsciously meaning all of the internalized narratives from all the people who ever talk shit about you and all the people who ever judged you. Like, yeah, you can definitely move as if you really believe all those things, all those negative things that people have ever said about you. You can absolutely move in that and not realize it, or move in and realize it. Or the autonomy of it all being, actually, I don't want to fucking believe that shit. I don't have to believe that shit. It's actually not a requirement for me to internalize all of these really negative thoughts about myself just because somebody else said it's true. What did Alphaba say? I'm done with what's she saying? Defying gravity. Hold on, let me find it. Maybe one of y'all can beat me to it. Y'all know I'm good for a Wicked reference. She said, I'm through accepting limits because someone else says they're so. Until I try, I'll never know. Or well, but until I try, I'll never know. But yeah, just because somebody else said that you can or can't do something, you don't have to believe that. What, because of your parent, your boss, your coach? I don't care if your mama said it. Prove her wrong. She don't know you. What do you think? What do you believe? What do you want to prove true to yourself? And how can you move based on that? You only believe you can't do that thing because you haven't tried something different. Or maybe you have tried something different. I don't know. But if we're talking about the realm of uncertainty, you just don't know yet. And that's okay. It's okay to not know. But you don't already have to believe an outcome that hasn't even happened yet. Why would you do that to yourself? Because you're trying to protect yourself, I know. From what might happen if you find out on the other end of it that maybe you're not very good at it. But guess what? That's just more information for you to work with. What's up, Eric? Hillary Duff said, why not for a reason? That's what I'm saying. Why not take a crazy chance? Why not do a crazy dance? What she say? If you lose a moment, then you lose a lot or something like that. Child. Do I even need to pull cards? Because that's just going to make me talk for another 30 minutes. I'm going to pull them anyway because I'm curious. Banger opening line to enter the entering the stream, Eric. Hell yeah. Mars said, sometimes you do, in fact. Gotta fuck around and find out. Because how the hell else you gonna find out? I mean, sometimes somebody else could tell you. Or you find out your own version to the story. Anyway, ciao. Oh, and what I wrote down for the gift of Mars and Sagittarius is leveraging, it's like leveraging your autonomy or exercising your autonomy by being self-righteous. Mars and Sagittarius is giving you permission to be self-righteous. Now, sometimes that's annoying as shit. Okay, it just is. Sometimes, obviously, we know the ways that can be weaponized in ways that suck. But sometimes, if you need a little boost, hell yeah, autonomy by self-righteousness. You better do you. I do it because I believe I can, bitch. And then because I believed I could, I found a way. All right. To my elevated and healed ancestors and spirits. It's the way I immediately start getting hot every time I start shuffling these cards. Let me do this. Very good. Okay, shuffling. To the elevated and healed ancestors and spirits. Thank you for this day. We're grateful for your divine wisdom, your insight, and for the ability for us to gather and talk about these things. Today, we come to you for insight and advice on what this new moon in Sagittarius is bringing us. What are we meant to learn? What are we meant to explore? And how should we navigate this, not just the next month, but the next 6 months until we get to the full moon in Sagittarius next summer? And how is this a closing from the last full moon in Sagittarius this previous summer? Because I'm sure it's related. I just pray that the message is concise, clear, and that I am able to deliver it succinctly. And so it is. Ashe. Amen. Boom. All right. Okay, so boom. We have King of Swords. King of Swords. The Emperor. Oh, I love to see him here. Hey, girl. This reminds me of something else I was going to say on this stream, so thank you for that. That's a gorgeous card. I don't think I've ever seen the Emperor in this deck. We also have, wow, Ace of Wands. I love her. And finally, Son of Coins. Page of Pentacles, I believe. No. Son of Coins is, oh shit. Son of Coins is Knight of Pentacles. Didn't we have that recently? Interesting. Okay. I'm going to put that in the chat. Is that right? I feel like I did this last week. I think it was Page of Pentacles last time. I actually don't remember anything. Don't ask me. Oh, yes, we did have this card last week. But now it's in the solution position. Okay. I'm pretty sure it's Knight of Pentacles. Okay. So our context, Father of Knives, King of Swords. King of Swords is like King of Swords is often somebody who wields truth in a way that is firm and direct, but still kind of gentle, like in a fatherly type of way. I think Queen of Swords, for example, is more about your own truth, whereas King of Swords is more about spreading truth in a way, which feels Sagittarius, but I don't necessarily mean spreading truth as much as I mean just like steadfast in the truth. And um I don't know, something about the way that all of the king suits, they have this way of like, it's not just you within yourself, kind of how queens are to me. It's more of like doing that in this larger, broader way that involves other people and a level of like leadership and I guess like the self-trust that it takes in order to lead others. But let me see what the book says. Okay, it's talking about intellect and dominance. A man works to cut down a tree in a forest with an axe. The Father of Knives makes decisions with both his intellect and his intuition. He expresses himself with strong conviction. The Father of Knives works to balance ethics, morals, logic, and reason. What a well-fitting card for this little transit here. He acts as a mediator, helping parties find opposite common ground. He's able to win over communities and individuals by his equitability and objectivity. The Father of Knives is welcomed and well received. This card asks you to make decisions with complete imparity. Make firm, well-researched resolutions. Do I even need to say anything else? Um, it's ambitious, professional, truthful, ethical. It can also be dishonesty, prejudice, opinionated, hungry for power, no matter the cost. I love when words that I said show up in the cards. So yeah, the context here for the new moon, the context, hey Richie, for this new moon is about making decisions with complete imparity, which means you're being firm, well-researched, and resolute. And ethical, which all of those are Sagittarius things. But again, I think this allows us to tap into the whole Jupiter and Gemini thing of you're not just giving your opinion, right? You're not just enforcing or imposing your beliefs on other people. You're coming from a place of, I've looked into this and considered multiple truths and multiple perspectives to arrive at this conclusion or this decision that I'm going to make. So I'm not actually just relying on my opinion and what I believe to be true without any evidence. I've actually looked into it and this is how I've arrived at my conclusion. That's kind of what Father of Knives is giving. It's less what's that word? It's less overzealous. And again, it's not prejudiced. We're always going to be a little biased, but it's not purely bias. It's a well-informed choice, decision, or belief, we'll say. So that's the context of this new moon. And being that new moons are about endings and beginnings, it says to me that we are putting to rest an old belief and coming to terms with a new truth of sorts. Okay, so the Emperor then in the situation context. I love this card. I love this card. The Emperor. The Emperor to me speaks about structure and boundaries. And one of the things that I actually thought about before I did any of my other thinking this morning was thinking about, I know we've previously talked about Mars as boundaries, especially when we talk about like Scorpio. I don't necessarily believe that Mars is boundaries. I think Mars is how you find out you need boundaries and you need limits, and Saturn ends up being the boundaries and the limits. So in this case, the Emperor as like the structure and the boundaries needed to be successful, needed to be a leader, again, needed to be like the firmness and the steadfastness of the decision comes from the fact that you are coming from a structured place. You've created a level of structure and boundaries, I would say in this case around your own mind, since swords tend to be intellectual or in the realm of the intellect and the mind. It's like when we were saying earlier, like you don't have to just believe anything. I know the temptation is there with the Gemini of it all and the fear of being wrong and the self-doubt and everything, but you don't have to just believe anything. What did Deb say? Deb said something earlier about is there a place for gaslighting to land? Is there a place in me for gaslighting to land? This card, I feel like, is the thing that says, like, is asking that same question, as a matter of fact. It says, do you just believe anything that you're told? And why? Do you know that you don't have to let every single thought and belief that you have or that someone else has penetrate you and be true? And like it kind of gives you some autonomy and some structure and some boundaries. So Mars and Sagittarius also giving you the ability to decide what you do and don't want to believe, which I guess I've been saying that, but in the context of boundaries, what I was thinking about when I was thinking about this, what I was thinking about when I was thinking was Mars and Sagittarius. Like if Scorpio is, I'm allowed to feel how I feel and you're allowed to feel how you feel, and both of us be feeling maybe different things at the same time, then Sagittarius is like, well, I'm allowed to believe what I believe and you're allowed to believe what you believe, and I don't necessarily have to believe what you believe just because you think it's true. And you don't necessarily have to believe what I believe just because I think it's true. I don't have to let your beliefs influence my truth. Basically, it's like a boundary that I feel like one is allowed to set. And it's remembering too, especially for Sagittarius in this moment, that boundaries are really not about what you allow other people to do. It's about what you allow yourself to do. It's a way of managing yourself. It's a way of getting really clear and really honest about who you are and how you move through the world, and deciding whether or not that's actually appropriate for you and whether that's actually meaningful for you, whether that actually feels intentional or if it feels compulsive. But you get to decide, you get to determine, I should say. You have autonomy over your body. You have autonomy to some extent over your conscious beliefs, your conscious mindset and ideas. So if you have autonomy over those things, rather than it's like the difference between going to church and telling the preacher to preach about something else because you're uncomfortable with what they're saying, versus you deciding whether or not you even go to church. Like you can decide to not go to church. And if you do go to church, you can decide whether or not you want to internalize the message that the pastor is preaching. Like just because you're sitting there susceptible to the information doesn't mean that it's automatically true and that you have to believe it. That's just one man's interpretation. That's one of the things that gave me so much peace and freedom about astrology, is that other people can believe whatever they want to believe. I don't have to believe that. Yes, and this media environment as well. Grok just whitewashed the man who tackled one of the Bondi shooters. Yes, exactly. Especially this media environment. Oh my God. Just because it's trending, just because Fox News said it, just because CNN said it, just because NPR said it, whoever it is, just because your favorite podcaster said it, just because somebody said that shit doesn't mean you automatically have to believe it. Doesn't mean it automatically has to be 100% true. So something about the Emperor that says that. Let me see what the books has to add. Okay. The Emperor. Um, Solidity, structure. A father sits on a throne with his son resting against him, comforted by his protector. He is the cosmic father operating with the principles of authority, rationale, and order. He relies on these ideals to create stability and security. The emperor rules over the systems of law, discipline, strategy, and knowledge with paternal compassion and understanding. He protects and commands using a grounded mind and a clear vision. When the emperor card is pulled, it's time to considering the following. Time to consider the following. What kind of leader are you? How do you show, use, and honor your power and strength? How do you protect yourself and those you hold dear, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually? So, if this is also a time, if y'all are like me and this is a time for you to do a lot of spiritual protections too, so that people can't evil eye you, you know, or do any mental magic on you, also do that. It's also a time for protection. So, this being the card in the beginning, the situation is needing, I think, protection, needing boundaries and structure and mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual protections and structures in place for you to move within so that you can do the Father of Knives thing. So the card in the middle as the obstacle, the thing to overcome, or the challenge of the moment is Ace of Wands. Aces are all about opportunities and new beginnings. Wands are usually about fire, creativity, passion, desire, intention in this case, I would say. So I think, again, I just, for whatever reason, keep coming back to this, but like, I was just saying this to my lover the other day, that because we're both Capricorns, that I think sometimes we even underestimate the power of desire, the power of desire. And like, when I say desire, I mean it in the same way that I talk about intention. It's just like wanting something, like really allowing yourself to want something to the point that you're willing to invest time and energy and feelings into it. Um there's something about that that is like, when people are talking about manifesting, and not in like a white supremacist kind of way, but manifesting and desire, so much of it is just about letting yourself want something. And because you've allowed yourself to want it, you've allowed yourself to have this vision of it, you've allowed yourself to feel really grounded in seeking this thing out, you open yourself up to it in a way that you actually start to pursue it. And like, the ways that you pursue it may not always be conscious, and it may not always be action. Sometimes it is like just opening your mind up. And I think we talked about this last month too. It's like, when you allow yourself to desire something and want something, and you get past all of the like the blocks to just desiring something in the first place, you start to find opportunities to seek it out. There's a psychological phenomenon for this that I actually think is what people are thinking of when they talk about manifestation. And I think it's is it the frequency bias or the recency bias or something like that? It might be something else, but it's that thing of whenever it's like, one of the examples they used in psychology was, when you're pregnant, now all of a sudden you start to see pregnant people everywhere, whereas before it didn't seem like everybody was pregnant. Or if you drive a red car, now suddenly you see red cars everywhere. Um, Algorithms obviously do this very on purpose. If you search for something, now all of a sudden you see ads for it everywhere. They're playing off of that natural human bias that we have, that once you start thinking about something, you start noticing it in places where you didn't notice it before. So Ace of Wands, same thing. I think it's talking about um I think it's talking about that desire, that passion for something that allows you to feel inspired to start moving towards it, and how once you have your mind set on it, you will find a way to achieve it somehow. And if you don't achieve the specific thing that you wanted, your desire also is allowed to change with more experience and with more information and with more insight that maybe you didn't have before you started pursuing it. So, that as the obstacle or the challenge makes me think that it's about letting yourself, not even just letting yourself want something, but like, um almost like allowing yourself to believe that you're worthy in the first place. Something priming, I forget the term. Yeah, that might be it too. I can't remember it either. I'll look it up in a minute. But Ace of Wands, Ace of Wands, Ace of Wands. It's basically giving to me like you have to start, like it all starts with an idea. It's kind of what that feels like to me. And if this is a new moon in Sagittarius, then like it starts with a belief. What did they say in the Bible? You got to have the faith of a mustard seed or whatever. I don't remember. I don't remember what the context is. But you ever seen how small a mustard seed is? And they said all it takes is you to have the faith the size of a mustard seed or some shit, and then you're able to, I don't know, have access to all of God's power or some shit like that. But all it takes is a little bit of faith. Ace of Wands. Creativity and inspiration. Two impala meatheads under a baobab tree in the savannah. Legend says that African royalty and elders choose the baobab tree as their meeting spot because they were able to commune with the spirits of that plant for guidance. The Ace of Wands is a call to heed your internal advice and wisdom. Be open to channeling inspiration and pursuing ideas that will allow you to rise above any obstacles in your way. Ooh, I like that. Act fast and harness divine intervention when it strikes. This card is a green light to build the world and the life you believe in. It's sending you motivation to continue creating, making, and designing. So it's talking about routine, spiritual awakening, a celebration of life, reevaluation, and it's also talking about negative reaction to revelations, energy vampires, narcissism, and stagnation. So, okay, frequency illusion. I thought it was frequency bias. Thank you. Yes. Bader-Meinhof phenomenon. Thank you. Oh, so clutch with the Googles. I can always count on you. Yes. That. I think this is asking to tap into that a little bit, and I feel validated in that by what this says. Act fast and harness divine intervention when it strikes. The card is a green light to build the world and the life you believe in. But you can't build the life that you believe in if you don't believe in it. Because then otherwise, yeah, you are building on a house of cards. And I think seeing this along with the Emperor does say something to me about discipline and routines, because they talked about structure with the Emperor. I was thinking about this too with Saturn and Pisces. A long time ago, I heard another astrologer say that Saturn, whenever it enters a house in your chart, which is basically ruled by a sign, when it enters that house, it's entering that house to bring structure to that house and to bring order to that house as well. And you know how Pisces is. Pisces is a little bit all over the place. Pisces is very unbound and it's very ungrounded sometimes. And it is, it has sometimes weak boundaries and it can be just a little too open. And I think Saturn in Pisces for a lot of us is meant to kind of like plug some of those holes. Less of a semi-permeable membrane, or rather less than a permeable membrane and more of a semi-permeable membrane, if anybody remembers biology class. You can let some things in, let some things permeate into your being, but not all. And you're allowed to have some discernment around the things that you do that do and don't get into your body, your psyche, your mind, your intellect, whatever. And so the discipline of it all, one is actually like monitoring those things more in yourself, but it's also creating rituals or practices or routines or things that, become habits after a while, that you're setting yourself up for success by giving yourself structure and actually adhering to the structure. So again, back to boundaries. I don't think a lot of people realize that like boundaries with yourself also looks like having structure with yourself and routines with yourself. And it's not a matter of just like being really strict and controlling yourself, because you can deviate sometimes. But if you're looking to, I love when the word describes itself, getting to this, because this is literally what this card is. It's the long game. Saturn is all about the long game. Saturn is all about the unknown, the uncertainty of the unknown, and the ignorance of the unknown, and that sometimes you're only going to find out by doing it over a long period of time. You're not going to get all the answers at once. That's not the point. The point is to keep doing things and keep building on the thing before. And Son of Coins, Knight of Pentacles, it really makes me think about like lifting weights is one of those things. Lifting weights is also very Mars Saturn too, where when you start out lifting weights, you're weak as shit because you haven't lifted any weights, bitch. Of course you're weak as shit. It just be like that sometimes. It's not a moral failing. But the only way you're going to get stronger is by lifting more and lifting consistently. You don't have to go all out every time, but you have to be consistent. You have to keep showing up. And you're not going to see results overnight. And as a matter of fact, it's not even going to feel good for at least a month. It's going to suck. It's going to hurt. You're going to be tired. Everything's going to ache. All right. You're going to have to eat more food. You're going to have to go to bed on time. You're going to have to drink more water. There's a lot of things you have to do. But if you keep showing up every single day towards this goal, towards this vision, towards your desire, with that structure and that routine, you will get there eventually. And you'll get there a lot of times before you even know it, because if you focus less on the outcome and more on the work that you're doing in the present moment, all of a sudden you'll be there. You won't even realize, oh my God, I've gotten so much stronger since I started, and now it doesn't even hurt as much. But wow, that really sucked in the beginning. But again, I'm using that as an example, but coming back to the astrology of the moment and this new moon and the Father of Knives of it all, like the Father of Knives, the context is that there's a lot going on for you mentally. If you're feeling like there's a decision to be made, or if you're feeling like there is, what did we say about the Father of Knives? You're trying to be ethical and moral and just in your decision by actually finding out what you need to find out. This is all telling you, if we're speaking in the realm of uncertainty and you're trying to arrive at a conclusion, this is all saying like there's a lot that you have to be an active participant in that. That's what it's giving. You have to be an active participant in your own quest for certainty. It's not going to just come to you without you doing any work. Like you got to be an active participant in seeking out that certainty. And it's not, and again, it's not just, I mean, I guess that really is the point, right? Because if you're not an active participant in seeking out the certainty, you will just believe anything. You'll just be led by somebody else's vision. You'll just wander off the cliff with the rest of everybody else who thinks that they're going to hell for being gay. Like we talked about earlier, if you just joined. But you have to be an active participant in seeking out that certainty. So yes, maybe you don't really know what happens after you die, but you do know that you can decide that, well, if what I want to do is live a life that is queer as fuck, I'm going to live a life that's queer as fuck, and I'm also going to be nice to people. I'm also going to be kind. I'm going to give back to my community. Okay, I'm going to do all the other things that I know would get me into heaven if my goal is to get into heaven. Something else that just came up as I said that, as a closing statement, is something one of my coaches used to say to me in high school all the time when I played basketball. She would say, play to win, don't play to not lose. And I feel like there's so much psychology in that statement that I don't even know if she was aware of. But play to win, don't play to not lose is all up in this spread as well. Because there's something about when you're playing to not lose, right? There's already a belief almost that you weren't going to win in the first place. Like you already showed up thinking that that other team is better than you. So you're playing to not lose instead of playing to win because you know your team is fucking capable. Because you know that y'all can do it, right? You know that you have a chance. But if you're playing to not lose in life in general, again, it's that, yes, more frantic and panic. It's in this like defensive posture or this reactive posture, right? Like as if you don't have any control over your actions or over the way that you are moving through the situation, that things are just happening to you and you're trying to stop them, which is, I think a trauma response, or it is a fight or flight kind of thing, and it's normal. But whenever I was talking all this time about like, when I was talking all this time about like, you can decide how you orient your mind towards something, I think that's what I mean is shifting from playing to not lose to playing to win, playing to give your best, like playing to utilize all of your strengths as much as possible. Yeah, it's giving into fear. Yes, exactly. It's very like, oh no, I don't know, blah, 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 instead of just like, all right, let's do this. You can, again, do it scared, do it uncertain, but it's the openness to find out. It's the openness to the discovery of it all. um yes, emotional authenticity. This is freaking me out, but autonomy through self-righteousness. But I'm gonna do it, and I can do it, and I can figure it out, and I will. Just maybe not all at once. I love it. I feel complete. Do y'all feel complete? Raise your hand if you needed to hear that today. I'm not even gonna hold you. A lot of what I was thinking about when I said this was apartment hunting. Because I'm on the fence about like, oh, do I want to renew my lease? Do I not? Do I want to stay here? But blah, 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 blah. And I can just sit. I mean, it's been superficial things for me, I guess, because Jupiter is in my first house. So it is me with dealing with myself in decision making. And a lot of times, like, I struggle with decision making as someone with Mercury and Capricorn because I feel like I don't have enough of whatever it is that I need to do the thing I need to do, or to make the choice I need to make. I'll just be like, I don't have enough money to move. I don't have enough money to get a new fork for my bike. I don't have enough support. I don't have enough information. I don't have enough of something. When in reality, I actually have a fucking lot. If I lean into that, if I actually acknowledge the things that I have instead of pretending that it's not there, because if I embrace it, then that means I have something to lose. Oh no. Well, yeah. If I ignore all the things that I have, if I ignore all the things that I already have, I'm doing myself a disservice. I'm suffering unnecessarily. I'm preventing people from loving me. Like, I'm getting in my own way. It's that thing I was just talking about. I'm playing to not lose all these things that I'm pretending that I don't have. Like, what? What if I moved as if I have things? Also, that very fair. I too also hate the idea of change sometimes too. And a lot of that for me is because I know change is going to require something of me that I don't want to give, maybe. And sometimes you just don't want to, and that's also valid. But like, decide that you don't want to. Do it mad. Do it with the anger and the hatred and the frustration of it all. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it unless you just don't want to do it. But you get what I'm saying. So yeah, I've been like circling in my head about all of these different things, getting on medication because I'm still not on medication because they still haven't approved the shit. Um, getting a new fork for my bike, or just getting a new bike, or moving, and where am I going to move to, and should I? Da, 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 da. It's like, okay, we'll start with a decision, and then you don't even have to act on the decision until you're certain that you want to act on it. But at least decide that you do or don't want to do something, and then try to figure out ways to do it. And if it just doesn't work out, it just doesn't work out. But at least you got started. At least you tried to lock in. At least you explored. At least you were curious, coming back to Jupiter and Gemini. If nothing else, if you get nothing else from this conversation, friends, I want all of these Jupiter ruled ass transits to make you say, to make you wonder what it would be like if you did. What would it be like if I did? And weigh out your options. What would it be like if I didn't? If you get nothing else from all of this, all the Jupiter in the sky is asking you to be curious. Be curious. Be curious and learn. Okay, that's all. I need to pee again. I hope y'all have a wonderful day. I hope y'all stay warm if you need to stay warm. I hope you eat some good food, drink some water, take care of yourself. And I will see y'all next Sunday. to see if anything new happens. If there's anything new to be discovered, if you found another way to ask that question or to find that answer that you're seeking. I believe in you. And if you aren't sure, I was going to plug myself. If you aren't sure and you want to book a reading with me to find out, but let's be real, you're not going to see me till January. So if you can though, I should find out soon if I'm going to be in another therapy cohort for queer therapy, because I quite like it. I think it's good for me. So I might be in another one, which means I might still just have one day available, but I think I'm dissolving my S Corp this next tax season, hopefully. And hopefully, I don't know how that's going to go. Honestly, I need more money. I really should open up more spots. But if you have the money and you can book me in advance right now, I would really appreciate that. I would really, really appreciate that. If you want to leave me a tip in my business account, send it to my PayPal through my business email, Mixed Mercury. That would also be great. I just got to figure out how to pay my accountant. I think it'll be okay since I get big boy job tax money stuff back, but I'll just be an LLC next year, so I don't have to worry about it as much. But yeah, I appreciate y'all so much. I'm gonna do a Patreon post sometime soon of all the significant transits for next year to pay attention to, so keep an eye out for that. And it will be free. Will it be free? If it's not completely free, it'll be mostly free. I gotta do a little something for my paid subscribers for holding me down all these years. So I appreciate y'all. Okay, that's all I got. Y'all have a wonderful afternoon. Talk to you later. Bye.